perceive something clearly and distinctly, I cannot help but believe it to be true. Also, I cannot focus my mental gaze on the same thing so as to focus it clearly. Memories from my past judgments return when I lose focus, bringing about doubts in my beliefs. How does the knowledge of God and soul help us? Firstly, it makes certain the rule that things that are clearly and distinctly conceived are all true. It follows that our ideas and notions, being real things and coming from God, if are clear and distinct, are anything but true. Secondly, the dreams that we imagine while asleep ought not to be doubted, as the ideas are put in us by a perfect being. For instance, if a geometer found the idea of a new theory in his dreams, he being asleep should not prevent it from being true. Lastly, misrepresentation of the various external objects in our dreams should not be questioned, as our senses also commit the same fault when we are awake. For example, the sun appears to us much smaller than it is when seen from a distance. Difference between mind and body. The body by its very nature is divisible, whereas the mind, or the soul, is indivisible. When I think of the mind, I think of myself, a thinking thing. We have the different faculties of willing, sensing, and understanding. However, we do not consider them as the parts of the mind. On the other hand, when we think of the body, we think of the hands, legs, face, etc. These are the parts of a body as we continue to live, even if even if one of our leg or hand is amputated. Mind is affected only by the brain or a small part of it, called common sense, whereas the body is affected by all its parts. The nature of the body is such that whenever its parts can be moved by parts that are at a distance away, then it can be moved in a similar manner by parts that lie in between, even when the distant part is doing nothing. For instance, when someone feels dryness in the throat, the cause is normally thirst. The brain reacts to get our mind concerned about bodily health. However, at times our mind is deceived because someone with dropsy could feel the same way. Hence, the brain cannot make the distinction and generates the same sensation. Cartesian circle. In order for Descartes to apply the clear and distinct rule, the criterion for truth, outside the cogito ergo sum, he had to prove the existence of God. However, in proving the existence of God, he uses this criterion, thereby creating a vicious circle. This accusation was clearly expressed by Adenauer in the fourth set of objections. The only remaining scruple I have is an uncertainty as to how a circular reasoning is to be avoided in saying, the only secure reason we have for believing that what we clearly and distinctly perceive as true is the fact that God exists. But we can be sure that God exists only because we clearly and evidently perceive it. Therefore, prior to being certain that God exists, we should be certain that whatever we clearly and evidently perceive is true. There are two major non-circular strategies used to interpret Descartes' unbounded doubt interpretation. It construes the hyperbolic evil genius doubt as unbounded. This means that the evil genius doubt undermines all kinds of judgments, including the cogito. When the mind is not perceiving it clearly and distinctly, when the clear and distinct premises in the argument are interpreted as unbounded, then the veracity of the C&D rule is not presupposed. The premises are now vulnerable to the hyperbolic doubt and the arguments are no longer circular. Bounded doubt interpretation. It constructs the hyperbolic evil genius doubt as bounded. This means that the skeptical potency of the evil genius doubt does not affect all judgments. There are certain special class of truths that are outside the bounds of doubt. When the clear and distinct premises are interpreted as bounded, then the veracity of the premises is accounted without the rule, hence there is no vicious circle. Existence of material things. Descartes, in the sixth meditation, mentions that we use the faculty of imagination in dealing with material things, hence it seems to follow they exist. Imagination is the application of the knowing faculty to a body that is intimately present to it, hence it should exist. This power of imagining is different from the power of understanding, hence it is not the essence of the mind. For if I were to lack the power of imagination, I would remain the way I am now. Hence the power of imagination depends on something distinct from me. Imagination as a mode of thinking differs from understanding. In understanding, the mind turns towards the ideas that are in it. However, in imagination, the mind turns towards the body, and imputes in the body if something confirms to the idea understood or perceived by the senses. Thus there is a corporeal nature in imagination. Further, in myself exists a passive faculty of sensing, that is for receiving and knowing ideas of sensible things. However, for this to happen, there is a need for existing in me or in something else an active faculty for producing these ideas. This active faculty cannot exist in me, since it presupposes no act of understanding, as these ideas are produced without my cooperation. Therefore, it should either be in God or a body or an extended thing. It cannot be God because He has not given me any faculty for this kind of reception of sensible data, but instead has given me a strong inclination to believe that these ideas are from corporeal things. However, if this is not true, and we were to believe that these ideas are from something that is not corporeal in nature, then God would be a deceiver. So bodies must be the cause of these ideas of sensible things, and therefore bodies exist externally to the mind. Provisional Code of Morals. For just as when the house that we live is being pulled down to be rebuilt, it is necessary to find some place else where one can live happily while the work is on. So too, in rebuilding our knowledge, we are in need of the code or rule to order our actions, so that we may not remain irresolute, even though reason requires it from us for our judgment. Descartes presents a provisional code of morals with three maxims. First, to obey the law and customs of my country. This includes holding on to the religion that I have been instructed in since childhood, governing myself according to moderate opinions, that is, opinions commonly accepted by the most judicious of the people that I live with, and staying away from the excesses. All promises that curtail someone of its freedom was counted among the excesses. Second, to be firm and resolute in my actions, and to follow the most doubtable opinions once I have decided on them. Then I need to move with some fervor that I would have had if they were assured. If a traveler is stranded in a forest and does not know his way, it is better for him to walk in a straight line in one direction that he finds most probable, than switching and changing his way, or stopping at a single place. In this way he will make some progress. Third, always try to conquer myself rather than fortune, and change my desires rather than the order of the world. I need to convince myself that there is nothing in this world that is within my power except my thoughts. Hence, for things that are external to us, once I have done my best, if there is anything that is lacking, from my point of view, that is impossible. Descartes tells us that out of all the occupations of man, the one that gave him most contentment was cultivating reason and advancing in the knowledge of truth, following his method. God has given each of us a natural light to distinguish between the true and false. Hence we should not confer to the opinions of others, but make our own judgments. Finally, when we judge well, we acquire virtue, in general, all the good, and we will be content. Conclusion. In conclusion, Descartes, in doubting everything, discovered the indubitable existential truth that he is a thinking thing. By calling our senses faulty and deceptive, he discarded the empiricist view that knowledge is built by experiencing the world through the senses. He uses the wax argument in his second meditation to prove this. When a piece of wax is fresh, our senses can perceive its odor, color, size, figure. It is hard, easily handled, and it makes sound when you strike. However, when the piece of wax is placed near fire, it loses all these sense properties. It becomes liquid and no longer makes any sound when struck. Thus, based on sense experience, without its distinct properties, it ceases to be a piece of wax. But our mind can still perceive the piece of wax clearly and distinctly, even without these sense properties. Therefore, mind or reason is the source of knowledge. The source of knowledge was shifted from the object to the subject. Descartes' theory of knowledge, that included innate ideas, arguments for the existence of God and the external world through deduction, gave birth to rationalism and a school of modern thought that was further expounded by Malebranche, Spinoza, and Leibniz. Thank you for listening.